Governor DeWine, as always, thank you so much for joining us. Really do appreciate it. Let me ask you about the federal response in East Palestine. What do you think? Is the federal government doing enough right now? Should it be doing more? What would you say?
Look, we monitor this every day. We have our own people on the ground, as you know, both from the medical side and the EPA side. Ohio EPA, Ann Vogel is there. Dr. Vanderhoff has been there many times. So, look, what we're seeing is that there are many people on the ground from the federal government. Probably the most important people are, medical doctors, others who are really experts in toxins, experts in releases like we have seen, and they continue to monitor the results and give us the best information that they have. So, I don't have complaints. I always have a complaint that bureaucracy never moves fast enough, and sometimes that's Ohio's as well as U.S. But we're really pushing everybody, and frankly, people are working very hard. We're seeing the stuff that needs to be removed from the site is moving out. They continue to load it up. So, we take one day at a time, but we're getting the help, that we need.
Governor, let me ask you about a Washington Post report that came out today. The headline of this story is "Toxic Air Pollutants in East Palestine Could Pose Long-Term Risks." Let me just read you a couple of these sentences here. The analysis by Texas A&M University researchers using EPA data seems to contradict statements by state and federal regulators that air near the crash site is safe. It goes on to say that these scientists found 9 air pollutants at levels that could raise long-term health concerns in and around East Palestine. Governor, I understand this is a new report, but when you hear something like that, what's your reaction?
I just read it, and it just came out, I think, 9 minutes ago or so, at least the story I got. And so I immediately called our team and I said, look, you go back to the experts who are there, and I want to know what they think of that. So look, there's nothing wrong with people who are outside the bubble, who are looking at data, coming up with their own interpretation. That's a good thing. It challenges the people who are on the ground, and we await their answer. So I hope to have an answer, in the next several hours. But there's nothing wrong with that, and that's what should be happening.
Governor, let me ask you about trains rolling through Ohio. Of course, this train that carrying toxic chemicals that derailed in East Palestine went through several communities in Ohio. That's certainly nothing new. But should residents be concerned that trains carrying these types of materials are coming through the state and through communities?
Well, as you know, we have a lot of trains coming through Ohio. In fact, we had a derailment of one car yesterday evening, I believe, in Portsmouth, down the southern part of the state. As we check on that, there doesn't seem to be a problem, doesn't seem to have been any release at all. Look, I think we have to continue to review this, look at this, and I think you take an incident like this tragedy that we have seen in East Palestine, and we try to learn from it, and we try to come up with how do you make things better. I mean, one of the things that ought to be pretty simple is the fact that many times our local fire departments don't know what's coming through their community. And as I talked to the fire marshal today, and I've talked to the fire chief at East Palestine, having better training that the railroad participates in, and the railroad with their experts and others helps being part of that training so that our people can be better prepared if something in fact happens, is very important. But of course, what we want is there be no derailment. And I think, this incident brings up what are the safety things that should be implemented in regard to the railroads that have not been yet implemented. But let's not forget that a good number, or a good amount of what rolls through Ohio doesn't roll through on trains. It rolls through on our interstate highway system. So as we look at this from the train point of view, at the same time, we need to look at it from the truck point of view as well.
You have spent a lot of time, obviously, in East Palestine of late. I wonder, Governor, you've talked to a lot of residents, obviously. What are they saying to you that perhaps we're not hearing? What can you tell us?
My guess is you're hearing the same thing that I'm hearing. I was down there a few days ago and, had two mothers say to me, I walked up on a porch with one person who was just sitting up there, a woman who was sitting up there. And, I had two of the women I talked to said, look, I'm afraid to let my kids go out and play in the grass. So we have to deal with that. I mean, the experts that I talk to say that are down there, they say, we don't think there's a problem. But look, if you live there, you're not going to be satisfied with that. You're not going to be satisfied until there's actual tests done. And so those things to keep people so that they can live down there and that they feel comfortable, we have to continue to test. We're testing the well water that goes into the village system, and everything came back good. But we said, look, we will test, the state will test every single week on into the future, and that water, and we will report back immediately if there's any kind of problem.
Governor,
look, if I could just add one other thing. I
yes,
think
sir.
the other thing people say to me is, look, I want my community to be back where we were before that train overturned at 8:30 at night. And so I think that is the objective. How do we get back to that situation? How do we get back to when people have confidence in the air, confidence in the water, confidence in the grass, confidence that nothing else, like this is going to happen, that everything is good? And we're not going to get there overnight. The cleanup continues. One of the things that we insisted with the railroad is, look, and people kept telling us, hey, they laid those tracks right back there, and they laid it right on ground that has the contaminants. And that's absolutely true. So we pushed the railroad and said, look, you need to dig that up and get that out of there. And they're going to do that next week.
Governor, a question about you now. In times of crisis like this, and I hope this is a fair question, what's the toughest part of your job?
Well, I think that, the challenge always is getting the facts and getting the information that we need. And then you always ask yourself, are there more facts out there? Are there more experts out there that we need to be talking to? Through the pandemic, that was the challenge. Through this crisis, throughout my career, even before I was governor, if I made mistakes, it was normally because I didn't have enough information or did not have enough facts. So trying to get that information, I think, is the key, the most important thing.
And a question now that came up a couple times this week as this story continues to get national attention, and of course you've been a national figure for some time, is Governor Mike DeWine running for president in 2024?
No, look, I'm focused on Ohio. This is a great time for Ohio. It's a great time of opportunity. We have a real window of opportunity to just grow this state, create more jobs, educate our people. We got a lot of great things going on. So no, I certainly wouldn't want to walk away from this job.
Okay. Governor Mike DeWine, as always, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
Take care.